The help video for the Chapter 9 grader project for Pearson. The reason I'm doing this grader project video is because this Chapter 9 homework and entire chapter really can be very confusing. It's very useful for you as you move through your learning of Excel and your abilities in Excel, but can be tricky. So I wanted to point out how to do the things in this grader so that you're not confused. Another reason for this video is that we won't have time to cover all of this stuff in lab, including hyperlinks and such things, but they are testable materials, so I wanted to make sure that you had a video to come back to as you're studying. So this is the video for that. Now, when you first open the Chapter 9 grader project, you get this warning box or something like it. This is the Mac warning box. The PC one looks a little bit different, but says basically the same thing. It says there are one or more circular references in the workbook where a formula refers to its own cell either directly or indirectly, which causes things to calculate incorrectly. Just means that inside this workbook somewhere there's an error that we're going to fix through the process of this grader. But this means that you've done a formula where you're trying to, for example, sum a bunch of numbers, and the totals row that you're trying to sum them in, you also include in the sum function itself. So it creates this never-ending circle or this infinite loop, and it can't sum those numbers together. So that's what this warning means. Make sure anytime you get a pop-up box in Excel with a warning like this that you read it. It's all of the time very helpful and can help you figure out what's actually wrong. But for now, we'll click OK. I have the printed directions in front of me, so hopefully you have the printed instructions in front of you for the grader project. I print them out and write on them as I work through these things. How you decide to do it is up to you. I won't be showing the instructions on the screen, but I will be reading them from the file in my hand, so hopefully that helps you as you go through. Step 1 here is download and open the file, acknowledge the error, and save the file as Exploring E9 grader A1 theater last name first name. So we'll go ahead and we'll just save this, save a copy of this file, and we're going to save a copy to my desktop. Told you anywhere but the downloads folder is fine, but we're going to save it as Exploring 09 grader A1 theater, and then it says underscore last name or first name last name. So I'm just going to say Professor King, and I'm going to delete this copy from the end because I've worked this a few times. So I'm going to go ahead and delete that, and I'm just going to go ahead and save this workbook. Now, step 2 says, on the week 1 worksheet, select the number of daily orchestra front tickets sold in the range C3 to G3 and create a validation with these specifications. So it asks us on the week 1 of the worksheet to select C3 to G3, and we're going to create some data validation. Data validation is how you protect your worksheet against a user that might make a mistake. So in this particular case, you'll notice that this orchestra front seating, we have 86 available seats. A person might inadvertently say that we've sold more than 86 seats. We want to protect against that, and the way that we do that is with data validation. I told you that in this class most often we will use data validation as a drop-down list, and we talked about that in lecture, but here's another way that we could use it. So we'll go to the Data tab and we'll find Data Validation. And the data validation, depending on the resolution of your screen, might just see an icon or you might see the words underneath it, but it's this little check and strike through. So good and bad data. We're going to select Data Validation. The instruction says to do it to the certain specifications. So the first specification in this step is whole numbers between 0 and the available seating limit in B3. So here I want to allow whole numbers between the minimum of 0 and the maximum number of seats that there are. So I'm going to lock that down in B3 because I want it to apply to B3 as the maximum for all of these different columns of data. So I'm going to make sure that I absolute reference that. Remember, on my Mac keyboard, that keystroke was function F4, FN F4. On your PC, it's F4. And for some of you who have weird Macs like me, it's a Command T. So that's the shortcut to get those dollar signs in there. So that takes care of our whole number between 0 and cell B3. And we're going to do an input message, and the input message is going to display to our user. So our input message title, it says, should be Orchestra Front make sure that you spell it correctly. Remember, it's being graded by a computer. So if you spell it incorrectly, it's not going to work. And it asks us for an input message of enter the number of tickets sold per day. Tickets sold per day. And it says include the period. So we'll do that. And then it asks us for an error alert. So the error alert is the kind of alert that a user is going to get if they mess it up. This one, it wants a stop alert with the title invalid data. Remember again that you have to capitalize it just the way that it does in the instructions, or it's not going to give you credit for it. And the error message, it asks us to say, you've entered an invalid value. Please enter a number between 0 and 86. Include the period. So you entered an invalid value, period, 1 space. Please enter a number between 0 and 86. So, not 96, but 86. So I want to point this out only because the first 3 times that I did this exercise, this is where I messed up. I put 2 spaces between my period and my first capital letter. You may not do that because we don't really do that anymore, but when I learned keyboarding, that's how you separated sentences. So if you put 2 spaces here and you're old school like me, it's going to count this as wrong. So make sure that you enter exactly what it asks for in the instructions. And then you'll press OK, and you'll see the screen tip come up here. Step 3 says group the 4 weekly worksheets. So to group the 4 weekly worksheets, we simply click on week 1, hold down the shift key, and go over to week 4. That'll select all 4 worksheets and puts them in a group. In this case, when these worksheets are grouped, everything that we do on one of them is going to happen to all of them. So it's a much faster way to make all this formatting and all of this stuff happen. So here we've grouped them, and now we're going to enter a formula in cell C11 to calculate Sunday's orchestra front revenue, which is based on the number of seats sold and the price per seat. Use relative and mixed cell references correctly. So in cell C11, we're going to create a formula that tells us how many seats we sold times the seat price. So here we're going to do the number of seats that we sold, so C3, plus the seat price. And here is where you have to kind of start thinking about what it means to have mixed references or absolute references. So I can absolute reference this B11. If I absolute reference, when I drag this formula down and across, it's always going to get that cell B11. It's always going to get $168. It's not what I want to happen. As I drag it down through C12 through C14, I want it to move the price along with me. So to make that happen, I have to use a relative reference for the rows. But when I want to drag it across, I don't want B11 to move to C11 or D11 as I drag this across. I want it to stay in B11. So this is our first real interaction with mixed cell referencing. So instead of being absolute referenced and frozen in B11, we know that by the $ in front of the B and in front of the 11, I just want this one to be frozen in column B. So I want this one to stay frozen in column B. Put the $ in front of the B to make sure that that happens. I'll press enter, and then I can grab this green fill handle and drag down and drag across as it asks me to. So I can copy that from C11 to G14. So that formula is located now in G11 to C14. I can double click over here and make sure that I'm capturing the data that I want and making sure my mixed cell reference works the way that I want it to. So that takes care of that. Step 4 says in the range C15 to G15, insert a function to calculate the total daily revenue. In the range H11 to H15, insert a function to calculate the weekly totals for the seating categories and the grand total. So basically it wants us to calculate totals. So here we use the sum function because our sum function simply adds things together. So we'll sum up this row, and once we sum up the row C11 to C14, we can take this green fill handle and drag it across to sum all these different columns. And again, you can double click to make sure that it's summing the total above it as you wish. We'll do another sum function over here in column H, and this sum function is going to sum up straight across the orchestra front. So be careful when you're clicking, and I have a mouse, that's why mine works so effectively, so be careful on your trackpad that you grab the appropriate cells to sum up. Here you want C11 to G11, close our parentheses and press enter, and that'll give us our weekly total. We can take this weekly total all the way to the bottom, and we'll get our grand total down here as it asks for in H15. Now, the next instructions say indent and bold the word totals in cell A7 and A15. So we'll select A7, we'll hold down Command on our Mac computer or Control on our PC, Command on our Mac or Control on our PC, and then click A15. This is how we do both of these cells at one time. So we're going to go back to the Home tab and we're going to increase the indent. That happens up here in the ribbon on the Home tab. You'll see all of the center, the alignment buttons here, and now we have a decrease indent and an increase indent. So we'll increase the indent and bold the text just by pushing those two buttons, and that'll happen to all of those cells at once. The next step says, in the revenue per day section of the grouped worksheets, apply a number accounting format with 0 decimal places to the orchestra front revenue, range C11 to H11, and the total revenue row, C15 to H15. So it wants us to grab C11 to H11, hold down Command or Control, and grab the totals row, and it wants us to apply accounting format with no decimal places. So to get the accounting format, we click the $sign, and we can back the decimal places out to 0 by using these buttons to move the decimals. So that applies the accounting format that way. Then it says apply the comma style with 0 decimal places to the remaining seating revenues C12 to H14. So we'll highlight C12 to H14, and again we'll do the comma style and back out the decimal places. The next set of instructions says apply a single accounting underline, not a border, to the range C14 to H14. So C14 to H14, it wants us to do a single underline, C14 to H14, single underline. And it wants a double underline on C15 to H15. So to get a double underline, you'll notice this underline button. When I hit it, it just put a single underline. There's a drop down arrow here to give me a double underline, and that'll double underline the numbers there. What it's not wanting you to do is click on the borders and select these double underlines from the borders this way. It wants you to underline the numbers, not the borders. So that's how you do that. Next it says with the Format Painter, use the Format Painter to copy the formats from A2 to H2 to A10 to H10. So it wants us to go A2 to H2, and it wants us to use this Format Painter. Click on the Format Painter, and it wants us to apply that formatting to A10 to H10. So you'll notice it just takes all of the formatting and takes it down to row 10, where it was just in row 2. Then select the range A1 to H15, A1 to H15, so basically all of our data, and auto-fit the columns. So to auto-fit the columns, I just clicked between any two columns to double-click between them and make the columns auto-fit. I'm going to undo what I did last because I shrunk one. So when I select A1 to H15, I'm going to double-click between two columns and make them auto-fit. You can double-click between all of them. It will auto-fit them all, so on and so forth. What it's doing is making them the right length depending on the size of what's in those columns. So you double-click between those columns. Then it says ungroup the worksheets. So we'll right-click down here on the worksheets and click Ungroup Sheets. It says display the Week 4 worksheet and fill the formats of C1 and C9 from the Week 4 worksheet to the October worksheet without copying the content. So how do you do that? How do you grab C1 and C9 and then just copy the formatting, not the content? So this is the easiest way that I know, right? There's lots of ways to do this. This is the easiest way that I know. Fill across worksheets is not an option here. And so what we want to do is we're going to click this Format Painter. By clicking the Format Painter, we're going to click in cell C1, click the Format Painter. By doing that, I can click on the tab for October and go over to C1 and click in cell C1, and you'll notice it paints the format. I'm going to go back to Week 4, and I'm going to click on the Format Painter again, and I'm going to go back to October, and then click on cell C9. Now again, there are other ways to do that. That's my personal preference. Gets the job done does what it's supposed to do. If you do it a different way, that's totally fine, but that's the way that I like to copy formats. Again, lots of different ways to get it done, but since it doesn't specify, I'll use the way that I like. So next, it says on the documentation worksheet, create a hyperlink from the week 1 label to cell A1 on the week 1 worksheet. So we're going to go to the documentation tab, and we're going to see this label for week 1. This label for week 1, it wants us to create a hyperlink that goes to cell A1 on the week 1 worksheet. So how do we do that? We're going to do that on the Insert tab, and you're going to have to forgive me for a second because mine is super small, so I got to find the insert link. Here we go. So insert links. Some of yours will say hyperlink here. Mine says link. Some of your PCs will say hyperlink, some of your Macs. So if it says hyperlink, that's the same picture that we're looking for. But here in the ribbon on the insert tab, we're going to insert a link. And we don't want a web page. We want something from this document. And we want to go to cell A1. If you're on a PC, it's automatically going to put A1 there for you, so you don't have to do that. But here on our Mac, we got to type the cell A1 from the week 1 worksheet, and we'll click OK. I'm going to click off of that cell and click on it and show you it does in fact take me to A1 on the week 1 worksheet. We're going to do the same steps for all of these other ones. It says create hyperlinks from the remaining worksheet labels to the documentation worksheet on the other workbooks. Okay, so week 2, same thing. We'll go up here to link, click cell A1, and this one we want to go to week 2, click OK. And the week 3 label, we'll go to week 3 and click on week 3, and it magically populates A1. I like it. So we'll click link again, week 4 in A1, and then this October summary worksheet, we will link to October and click OK. Now all of these links work the way that they should. Next instructions. On week 1 worksheet, create a hyperlink from cell A1 back to A1 on the documentation worksheet. So now we're going to create the links that go back. So up here where it says home, we're going to create a hyperlink to go to the documentation page on cell A1. So that's as simple as doing that. But this time it wants us to add a screen tip. So our screen tip is going to say, click to go to the documentation sheet. And again, make sure you do the same capitalization, the same spacing, the same spelling as is on your instruction sheets. So this time we created a screen tip. We didn't have to do this for the rest of them. Create a screen tip. You click on the screen tip button here and just type what you would like for your screen tip in that box. Group the worksheets. Okay, and fill across. Okay, so we're done with that. And now it wants us to group the worksheets, the weekly worksheets, and then fill across. So we'll go week 1 all the way to October. We'll hold down the shift key and group them all together. And now we're going to go back to the home tab and do this fill. And fill is going to allow us to fill across worksheets. We get the option to fill across worksheet everything in this cell that we're clicked in, the content or the format. Well, we just wanted to fill it all. So now our link that we put on the week 1 worksheet will be on all of them, and the hyperlink will work the same way. Let's see, let's make sure we got it all. Go to the weekly. Yeah, so we're going to ungroup these worksheets, and we're going to make sure that this worked. So on the week 4 worksheet, we're going to click this home and make sure that it takes us there. It does. So we're good to go. Now, next step says, in cell C11 of the October worksheet, insert a 3D reference in the function using the sum function that calculates the total Sunday orchestra front revenue for all 4 weeks. Copy the formula to the remaining seating types and weekdays. So, on the October worksheet, it wants us in cell C11 to create a 3D reference. So what this is asking us to do is create a sum function that takes this particular cell on this worksheet, this worksheet, this worksheet, and this worksheet, and adds them all together. So specifically asks for a 3D sum function, so you can't just click on it and add the plus sign. You must click on it and create this 3D reference. I'm going to show you how to do that. Now, will adding up the cells on each individual worksheet get you the same answer? It absolutely will, but again, not what it asks for here. So we're going to do equals sum. We're going to open our parentheses. We'll click on week 1, the tab name. We'll hold down the shift key and click on week 4. You'll notice up here I now have a sum. Week 1 through week 4 worksheets. Remember in lab we talked about the fact that that exclamation point told us that that's a sheet name. So I want to take week 1 through week 4, and I want to sum cell C11. And I will close my parentheses and press enter. And you'll notice that you get a number that is in fact the sum of all of those worksheets. So now it says copy the formula for the remaining seating types and weekdays. So I'll drag this down and drag it across. Again, I don't need any absolute references because nothing is frozen. I want it to move as I move across the sheet because all of these sheets are formatted the same way. If they weren't formatted the same way, this would not work like this, but they are, so we're in good shape. Next set of instructions says, in the week 4 worksheet, select the range C11 through H15 and fill the revenue number formatting to the same range on the October worksheet. So I'm again going to do the format painter. Again, there's lots of ways to do this. It doesn't tell me which way to do it. So I'm going to do format painter. I'm going to select C11 to H15, click the format painter, and then I'm going to click on the October worksheet and click in cell C11. When I do that, it's going to copy all the formatting over, which is what I want. Now, in cell C3 of the October worksheet, we're going to do another 3D reference. This one's a little complicated, so let's take it a step at a time. It says, enter a 3D reference in the formula that calculates the overall percentage of total Sunday orchestra front tickets sold based on the total available orchestra front seating. The formula must sum the total of the Sunday orchestra front tickets in the cell C3 of the weekly worksheets and then divide it by the sum of the available orchestra seats in B3. Avoid raw numbers and use appropriate mixed references and relative references to derive the correct percentage. So we have a 3D reference with two sums. So here we've got a sum, and we want to add up across all 4 worksheets. So sum, open parentheses, click on week 1, hold down shift and click on week 4. I want to sum together all of the Sunday tickets. And again, I want this to move with me as I move throughout the sheet. So in this particular case, there are no absolute or mixed references. So I'll close this up and I'll do sum. And then I'm going to do, to the percentage, I'm going to do a division symbol. Excuse me. So divided by the sum of, again, week 1 to week 4. Week 1, hold down the shift, week 4. But this time I want the available seats. So the available seats are in B3. I don't want to absolute reference this. I don't want a dollar sign in front of the B and the 3 for the same reason that we talked about earlier. I just want the dollar sign in front of the B. So here it will freeze in column B and move with us up and down the rows as we change our data. So that'll give us a 1. But that's the right answer. So let's see. Format the results with a percent style. So to do that, we click on, let's click back in cell C3. Click on percent. And then copy the formula to cell C4 through C6 and D3 to G6. So we want to go all the way over to G6 with that. So we'll drag down with a fill handle and then drag across to G6. In cell H3 of the October worksheet, this is the next step, calculate the average daily percent for each seating type. Do not use a 3D reference formula, just a regular formula. Format the results with a percent sign with 1 decimal place. So here, doesn't want a 3D formula, just wants an average. So average of these numbers. So an average of the percentages sold. So an average of C3 through G3 and enter. This time it wants this to have 1 decimal place and be in the percentage style. Now, this looks really weird. This Friday, what do we got here? Oh, I did it wrong. Okay, so that's good. I can show you how to fix it. So when I look at this, I'm like, that can't possibly be, right? The average daily percentage can't possibly be higher than 100%. That doesn't make any sense. So I started looking through my data, and this is what you should do, both in the real world, on an exam, and anything that doesn't make sense, right? There's no way that I sold more than 100% worth of the seats. So as I was doing this 3D formula, guys, I was telling you that we needed to freeze this in column B. But I accidentally hit my FN F4 key the wrong amount of times, and I froze it in row 3. Well, I don't want to freeze it in row 3. I want to freeze it in column B, so I need to make sure that that dollar sign is in front of the B, not in front of the 3. So I can fix that. I knew that one was supposed to be 100%. But now I can drag down and drag across, and all of a sudden, I'll notice that none of these numbers are over 100, which makes a lot more sense. And I can see from my formula here that I'm still frozen in row B, which is what I was trying to accomplish with my relative references. So that's a good way to check that. Again, I told you, I make lots of mistakes. It's nice. If you don't make mistakes in Excel, you'll never be able to fix it when it does go wrong. So as you practice, just know that mistakes don't mean that you're doing a horrible job. It just will give you the ability to go and make those corrections. And you'd much rather make them now than on an exam or out in your career. So we'll work on them now. Now it says in cell H3, oh, we did that. Copy the formula down to H4 to H6. Next instructions, correct the circular reference in cell B7. So to correct the circular reference, we're going to go to the Formulas tab, and I always click on Review because I feel like it should be in the Review tab. It's in the Formulas tab, and you'll notice this error checking box here. So we're going to select this error checking box and say there's a circular reference in B7. We'll click on that, and we'll go and it'll show us the formula. This is trying to sum B3 to B7. Can't sum itself. We'll change B7 to B6, and sum B3 to B6. It'll fix our circular reference, and that will be very helpful. The next set of instructions says create a footer on all the worksheets with the sheet name code in the center, the file name on the right, apply the landscape orientation, and center the worksheet horizontally on the printouts, then ungroup the worksheets. So you can do this one at a time if you wanted to, but you can group all of the sheets. Click on October, hold down Shift, click on Documents to group them all, and then we can just do this once instead of doing it however many times we need to. So we'll go, this is how I get there. Again, lots of different ways to get there. I'm going to go to the print menu. So on my Mac, it's File up here. On a PC, there's a File tab. But either way, we're going to go to the print or the page setup. So if you click on print, and then in a PC, you can click on page setup, or you can just click on page setup here. Go to header and footer and create a custom footer. In the center section, it wants the sheet name. So we'll hover over them until we find the one that says sheet name. And in the right section, it wants the file name. So we'll hover until we find the file name, and we'll click OK. And then on the page tab at the top, we want to make sure it's landscape. And on the margins, we want to center it horizontally. So those are the 3 steps that it wanted us to work on for that. And then says ungroup the sheets. We'll right click and ungroup the sheets. Now it just says save and submit. Make sure your tabs are in the correct order. You need documentation, week 1, week 2, week 3, week 4, and October. So we can save this because I'm not on autosave on my Mac. We can save this, and we'll go out to Pearson and turn it in. I'm going out to Pearson to turn it in because I want to remind you of how you can find out if you mess something up during your submission. So I'm going to go ahead and submit mine and hope that it's a good score. So for me, it doesn't matter what lab you click on, but you'll go to your lab, and then assignment calendar, and you'll wait and wait and wait and wait and wait. Now, some of you have told me that you can't find your assignments once you save them, so make sure that you know where you're saving them to. Remember, I saved mine to my desktop, so make sure that you know where yours are being saved to so that you can go back and get them. This is Chapter 9 Grader, and we're going to upload this assignment. So I will choose the file, which hopefully is hiding on my desktop, where it should be. And let's see. Let's see, desktop. Oh, here it is. Chapter 9 Grader, Professor King. So I'll hit open. Yep, that's what I want. And then the upload button, which is super annoying that you have to hit it, but then submit for grading. So again, once you submit it for grading, it's going to pop back up here. If you need to resubmit it, you simply click on this. But to see what you submitted, you click the 3 dots, the vertical dots, click View Submissions, and it'll tell you what you got on your assignment. So we got an 88, which is good enough for 100. But we're going to look through this, and we're going to see what we did that it's mad about. So you can scroll down, and it'll tell you that on Step 3, we messed something up. So group the 4 weekly worksheets. Enter a formula in cell C11 to calculate sunders based on the number of seats using mixed and relative references. So we can click on it, and it tells me that I did a whole bunch of stuff wrong. So I can open my worksheet back up, go back to week 1, and let's see what I've done. Let's see, where'd it go? Okay, so in the cell C11 to calculate, so in C11 it wants C3 times B11. What did I do? Y'all don't remember. Let's find out. So open it back up. C11. I did plus. This would be a problem, right? So when I said it out loud, I said times, and then I typed plus symbol. So this is good. I can just go in here and type the time sign, which makes a whole lot more sense as we move. We can pull all of that over and get the correct numbers there in our thing. That looks a lot better. So that would have been nice if I had grouped those worksheets. So let's group week 2 and week 4 now and go back and fix this to not say plus, to say times. And I'll go ahead and fix this on all my worksheets. This is what you should do when you run into a problem. Now remember that I also had to underline these, and I've just broken this single underline here as well. So I'll go back and single underline those. And let's see what else we missed. We can keep scrolling down and it'll tell us again exactly what we did that it didn't like. So we also, in the range, insert a function to calculate the total daily revenue. So G15 to C15, it says I didn't do this correctly. Well, which ones didn't I do correctly? Cell C15 of week 1, formula result is not set to that. Well, it's looking to see, guys, if I calculated this to 29,238. So let's go back and see if that's what I've got, 29,238. So I got that marked off because I accidentally hit plus instead of hitting minus. So that carries through, and that's going to fix that. In cell C11, this is going to be, it's not set to 1400. So fixing that one mistake is going to fix all of those flow-through errors, which is nice. So Pearson tells you exactly what you did wrong, which I do like about it. So you're able to go back and fix it. Now, let's go back and submit it again. So we'll close this, and we'll go back to our Chapter 9 grader, and we'll submit this one more time. And we will submit it just exactly the same way. Professor King, open, upload, submit for grading. And we'll see if I did a better job this time. Now, again, with the 88, you could just stop. And you probably didn't make the same mistake I did, and you probably were laughing at me this whole time. But, again, I like making mistakes and letting you guys watch that, so you can see what happens. Now, this is a 98.3. In real life, I would never go through here to see what in the world I did. But, again, I probably just missed one as I was dragging this stuff over. So, I'm not going to go back and worry about it. Oh, I broke my formatting. So when I did this, I didn't go back and set my formatting. So I'm not going to do that, but you know the drill. Now you know how that you could do it. So I hope that you found this video helpful, and I hope that even finding your mistakes you find to be helpful. And if you have questions, please let me know, and please enjoy lab. Good luck studying for your exam.